Hi everyone. So today we are going to learn about the trends and tendencies that are found in the modern poetry. As you know that before moving towards the modern poetry, we have to go through some of the chunks of the previous trends and traditions of last poetry. So the changing outlook influenced perspective of modern writers as we are no more suffering with the old social issues, and there is a new social outlook that is giving rise to new trends, to new ideas, and to new phenomena of the writers, of the poets. So that has ultimately changed all of the course of their perspectives that they are writing with. Poets, their new sensibility, did not want to continue prevailing poetic trends. They are no more, wanted to be decorative in their language. They are no more to use their royal social themes. They are just, coming and pouring upon the ideas. They are reflecting upon the common man, and they had made their the main concern of social and societal issues reflecting upon the lives of the common people, the common persons. So there are no more previous trends and tendencies that we are going to know about more in later on this lecture. So, decline and innovation, both things go side by side. One is declined and the other one is innovative. So, that has been the course, or that has been the path since we are reading literature. So, A.C. Ward, decline in poetry after Tennyson. So there is a decline we can see in the poetry, and every decline is giving rise to another innovative beginning. So, you know that everywhere when there is the decline of something, there is a beginning of another thing. As civilization advances, poetry declines, but there have been innumerable poets, many of them making exemplary contribution to reach the heritage of English poetry. People are, you can say, most probably the poets, they never stopped writing. However, there can be a decline all over. So there are a lot of experimentation, innovation, many movements, schools, groups appeared and disappeared. For example, Imagism, Surrealism, etc. And some poets stuck to the traditional forms as well. However, in every era, we see that there is a variety of people we meet having their own individualities. Some are very much captive towards the modern trends following their contemporary era, and some are deeply rooted in the past and they really want to carry on with their perspectives that were carried for their earlier poets. So there is a difference and that go in every era with us. And there is also some combined tradition and innovations as well, that you cannot make a very secular or a very separate perspective in anything. You know that what we think as the students of literature, you might have gone through these intellectuals as well, that when you are having a new innovative perspective, that cannot solely be a new perspective, but the roots can be there in the earlier or past experiences you have gone through. So you can now form your own personal perspectives without the including of the previous incidents that took place in your life and that were carried by your fathers or forefathers. So innovators like Eliot are also influenced by poets before them. So Howard T.S. Eliot is our major or very prominent figure of modern poetry, but even then we cannot say that he was all there with the new perspectives. However, he was following the new trends. There were very much new tendencies that are going to be there. You are going to read about modern poetry. But however, in spite or despite of these things that he was carrying in the innovative forms, he was also somewhere in the previous or in the earlierly carried things that were in the modern, that were in contrast with the modern poetry. So we are talking about the themes of modern poetry. Almost anything from the telephone cord to the universe, not only beautiful, but as T.S. Eliot puts it, a poet should be able to see beneath both beauty and ugliness, to see the boredom, the horror, and the glory. So if a person, if a common person have a landscape of different things, the common man will go with their apparent or surface perspective, but the poets are always having a more deeper meaning into everything they see, they look, they hear, or they go through. So the themes are very much are the moods are real life, religion, mysticism, and fairyland. Before going more towards the themes, let us discuss these very common and major perspectives that I have brought for you people. Real life, you know that the life is more real now. The people don't live in the imaginative figures today, because the real fights are the more intensified one. And so we can say that the real life is something that we actually fight in our real lives very much. And yes, we can say that people are actually more living into the real life. That if we go back into the earlier poetry, or into the poetry of the earlier decades, we will come to know that that was all about royalty, and the royal themes were there just to please the kings, the queens, and all the piece of writings were to be written for their for making them pleased. So in this way, that we can say that now the focus of the modern poetry has been shifted towards the common person, the life of common man, and we are more real now. We are no more that much imaginative. However, imagination still is playing a role into our lives, but in what way, let us discuss it later. Now, the religion and mysticism, you know that the problems that the common person of today is facing, the only salvation we get from our miseries, from the issues, from the societal barriers, and from the the scandals that we are going through in this modern era, the only salvation, or the only thing that consoles us, is the shelter of religion. So the religion is something that is going from our hands day by day, and that is, on the other hand, the only thing that we get the salvation into. You people have observed this thing, that whenever you are in extreme distress and depression or dejection, the only thing that consoles you is your belief of religion, is your belief that you are going to be rewarded for your patience, is that you are going to be rewarded, and there will be a revenge for any bad thing, any injustice, any inequality that you have suffered from. So in this way, that there is the only salvation that we feel strengthened by, is our religion and mysticism. And yes, coming towards this, the next theme, fairyland, you people can see that in today's era, when common person is suffering from a lot of battles, inside outside battles, the only thing that he goes with this escapes from this miserable reality sometimes, because a human being cannot stay in the situation of battle for a long time, and after some time we really want to have, or we require, the peace of our mind. So for that purpose, there is an ultimate opportunity for a person to escape into the land of imagination, like a utopia of Plato, a perfect land, an ideal land. Everyone has built it in his mind. However, we don't live in that land, but sometimes just to escape from the bitter realities of life, like dejection, depression, anxiety that we get from people or our surrounding. So there is an opportunity to escape to the fairy land that we can have in our mind. So in this way, imagination still plays an important role in our lives, but you cannot say that we are very much imaginative, just like the forms of hero and heroines are now totally changed. You cannot just go on thinking that a hero is someone, who is riding a horse and coming towards, and he is fighting with the six men at the same time and still winning the battle and all these things. I'm just giving you an example that what sort of heroic figures the earlier people or the earlier the earlier masses were having. Now we believe that for us, for this modern era, hero is someone that is a noble person having the noble characteristics in his character and its personality, and an educated one. So this is the shift, this is the change of focus. So this is actually the themes of real life, religion, mysticism, and fairyland. So if we come towards the humanitarianism and democratic note, our realization of the sad realities of life, I have just told you that no more we are living in a palace, and we no more imagine a palace and we are living in there as a queen or some of sort of princess. Like you have to be into your real life, and you realize very soon, as as early as you get the sensibility, you get the thing that life is no more a bed of roses. So this is the realization of the sad realities of life, led to a note of fellow feeling and humanitarianism. That as much we are suffering from something, we can associate, we can sympathize with the other person who is going towards or who is suffering from the same miseries you do. So in this way, we actually sympathize with each other, because now the focus is the miseries, the problems or the dejections of the common person. So being common, we can relate ourselves with the other ones, and in this way we can make sympathies with each other. So the modern poet talks of the life of laborers, toilers, field workers. These are the people who are suffering from poverty. They are lacking the resources, and most of our population is suffering from these issues. So we can say that the voice of today's poet is the voice of common man, and voices indignation against social repression, strains of socialism, communism, Mansfield, and Gibson and Glassworthy. They all were, speaking about the same common pressures that we are holding today. And this is that how we can communicate with each other through the piece of writings, through poetry, and that are the major you can say that common themes, and that are the trends that now are followed by all of the population, because most of our population is suffering from the same issues. So if we talk about realism, so how we can justify the realism in the modern poetry, here it is. Reaction against the pseudo-romanticism of the last century. So realism is actually the, that it is reaction against the romanticism, and now we don't no more romanticize the things. However, we like to be more real, and sees and writes life as it is, beauty and ugliness. In the later part, we are also going to read about these things. So what was actually happening in the last decades, in the era of romanticism, that people were only presenting the good side of the life just to motivate people. But this modern times are the times of awareness as well, and we no more believe that life is a bed of roses. However, we believe that a man can be good or bad as well. We no more believe that someone is angel and someone is Satan. So the man is a fusion of these things. So the poets of modern era are presenting the beauty as well as the ugliness of the real lives, and that is attracting towards a more real picture, a big picture of man and his society. So the facts like prostitution, wars, terror, brutality, slum dwellers. These were unpoetic themes till now. So you can say that poets of realism like Robert Frost, Edmund Blunden, Gibson, and John Mansfield, they were the poets of realism. These are the very prominent figures in the modern poetry, and you can go through them individually for getting a more deeper understanding towards these poets of realism. There are also the war poets with us, as you know that modernism is all the effects and the post-war effects. So here are the war poets, the Siegfried Sassoon, Rupert Brooke, and Wilfred Owen. These are the war poets. Also, we get to know about, as I just told you people, that that is pessimism, that is dejection, the era of common people who are suffering from depression, from the anxieties, from the sad realities of life. So this is the age of anxiety, and that is why the poets are not only writing about the beauty of the things, but they are also presenting the ugliness, the sad realities, and they are unfolding, they are revealing the anxieties of the real life. So, not of pessimism and disillusionment in modern poetry. People are now disillusioned and they are now aware of the realities of life, whether they are good, whether they are pleasant, whether they are unpleasant. So two wars, that is a gloomy shadow on people. That war is something that have very disastrous effects on the human lives, on the economy, on everything that we have in this world. So the war is the name of bloodshed and killing on a large scale. So in that way we can say that the war is actually a gloomy shadow that not only affects us until it happens, but there are also the post-war effects that really make us mentally miserable, and that is a gloomy shadow that keep on prevailing in us, and still that anxiety is carried by our generations and generations. That you can say that you have heard about this thing said by many people, even by you as well, that people of the modern age are much in anger, they are much in anxiety, they are much more impatient than their forefathers. So what is actually the thing, that the situation of this gloomy shadow is getting intense and severe day by day. So that is the post-war effect on our generations. Pettiness of human life and tragedy and suffering of downtrodden, as many people or the major countries are suffering with their major parts drowned in poverty. So people are more tragic, and the life has made a tough examination for them as well. Also they are disillusioned, just like before, the imaginations, I have just told you about hero, about the palace, about the king and queens. Now our focus is no more there. However, our focus is much more like who we are, where we are born, and what are our surroundings. So we are disillusioned with all these things, that when we get the sensibility, we are disillusioned that this is our reality, and this is what we can in what circumstances we can make something or destroy something. This is our resources, and this is all we are having, and this is how we we are behaving in this life. And then there comes the materialism tensions, and the poets of these major concerns are Haussmann, Hardy, Huxley, and Eliot. So not self-pity, but intellectual and impersonal pessimism. So you can say that we are moving towards our next slide. And as we are discussing that in spite of realism, the pessimism is a more advanced trend in this modern poetry, because much of our reality is giving us anxiety and dejection. People are no more in the gardens of beautiful imaginations, but they are back and they are encountering their reality that can have an impact of pessimism in them. But some poets do show romantic tendencies, and they were Walter D. Lemire, James E. Flecker, Yeats, Mansfield, Edward Thomas. So these are the poets that are making their mark in the romantic tendencies as well. Romantic spirit touched with supernatural fairies and mythical splendor. The next very major concern that we have also discussed earlier, but here is a deep depiction of this major concern, that is religion and mysticism. So that also find place in modern poetry as flame of religion and mysticism kept alive. You know that whenever we suffer, our intensity of our belief on our religion gets more, in numbers. So this is the thing that the sufferings of this modern world has now become more intensified. So as much as the severity of suffering is increased, as much as our flame of religion in our hearts has gone deeper. So that is a very deep connection of suffering and the modern world with the religion and mysticism. So we can never separate them. However, they are more bound with each other now. So Francis Thompson and Robert Graves, G.K. Chesterton, W.B. Yeats, and George Russell are the poets that can be counted in this regard. And then what is happening is just like, and this is the popular theme of every time poetry, and that is love. That is a very required, a necessary, a mandatory element, or of a feeling that we should have possessed if we want to be alive. All our other rest of the concerns are just related to this particular thing, because you have to be loved, or you have to love certain things to stay alive. That gives you strength to be alive. So fine poems, lyrics of love also written, but few despair fulfillment. And for that purpose, John Masefield, Robert Bridges, Arthur Symons, and Yeats are here. So the nature or the theme of nature is very much discussed in today's era, because nature is fascinating as opposed to the ugliness and the trappedness of an industrialized and over sophisticated world. Today we see that we find very little time to sit in the company of nature. However, as much as the world is advancing, it is moving more towards the industrialization, and that is giving us a little margin and leaving us with a little room to spend our time with nature. However, in the dejections and depressions of life, you might have feel that how about if I present you a picture, and you can make a contrast that how nature is playing its role in a solace of our to our depressions and anxieties. Just like imagine yourself suffering from some inner anxiety, suffering from something that is eating you up inside, and there is a limelight of there is you can say that there is a twilight that you are standing, and there is a whole of a scenery of nature. There are trees, there are birds that are whistling, chirping, and there is a cool breeze that is blowing, and that is a time of twilight, and you are just focusing and talking to Almighty, or talking towards the looking upward the sky. So how about this feeling that if you are depressed or deep in anxiety inside, so if you are going to watch this scenario, or if you feel, or if you imagine about this thing, so how you feel, or how much light you feel when you will spend an hour or some minutes of yourself into the company of nature. Can the effect be same if you are still standing in a front of a factory or some industry and watching it with your anxiety and depression? Can the effect, the impact, the healing power can be same for both these two sceneries? No, that they actually differ. The nature is healing you, however the industry will make you more anxious one. So here we find the difference, that how nature is healing us in our depressions, but the world is advancing more towards industrialization, and they are more overly sophisticated, because sometimes we really have to we have to just speak it out, whatever we are feeling inside, but our sophisticated world does not allow us that. So that is the thing that the poets are actually trying to draw the audience or the readers towards nature, to give them a more concealing, or towards a more healing power to their sufferings. And then we can say that modern part of nature, not a mistake, does not find spiritual meaning in nature. So this actually is a difference, and but elated, charmed at nature's loveliness, and also John Masefield, Robert Bridges, Edmund Blundell are the poets that we can count in this regard. And coming towards the complexity and psychology, there is psychological complexities, there is difficult imagery and interest in subconscious working. All these things were not carried before in the earlier poets, because now we are having a much more deeper, a much more complex psychologies. As much as we are getting into the mind of the characters, we are getting the sense that the psychologies or individualities of people are more complex. They are no more that much simple. As you know that now the trend is that if you watch the piece of literature, most of the time you encounter the characters talking to themselves, revealing their different psychologies and psychological complexities. So today's world is a psychological complex world, and there are many much difficult imageries that we go through, and the interest in subconscious working. However, and in the earlier world, what was happening, that people were actually given a picture of what is actually happening outside. But today's poetry, the modern poetry, is much more concerned with not with what is happening outside, but what is happening inside. This is not about the battles of the outer world, but this is about the battles that a person is fighting with inside. So there is no more fights that we see, that a heroic fight that a person is fighting with the six men in the same time. But what happens that a person is actually fighting with the 10 of different issues, the 10 of different sufferings inside. So that is more psychological than to be outer appearances. So here comes the more important point of this modern poetry, that is diction. So the today's world poetry is no more decorated, is no more highly in a vocabulary of difficult words, and no more there is a trend to follow the decorative depictions. However, they are simple, there is direct expressions, and the words chosen for their association and meaning. So there is free verse, and we are no more bound to just select and go on, making it a lyric, or making it a rhymical poem. So there is no much rhythmic boundaries as well. So this is a freestyle, a free verse, simple and direct expressions that is carried in this modern depiction. And literature is life, and modern poetry is reflection of modern life. It is no more about the imaginations of what a queen can have in life, or if the king is going towards something. So this is the life of a common person, and that is very much realistic in tune as well, and that actually expresses the spirit of our age. So in this way we are having this all discussions. We are going to wrap it up, and all the things that you have gone through, I have tried to give you a comparison. The modern tendencies, and the content was taken from various things from the internet, just to let you people get a more clear understanding of the things. Now I'm going to also present you a video that can be helpful to you. Go and watch it.